Hey guys, welcome to the Son of Wonder, and the Bad Batch Season 2 finale has dropped. Episode 15 and 16, so let's conversationalize. Okay guys, so these episodes were really far from what I expected. I expected something very specific. If you've watched my previous reviews, you'll know. I expected some kind of attack on Mount Tantus, that Omega would get captured and brought there, and the Bad Batch would have to go rescue her, all that stuff. Not what happened. A little close, but not exactly. So, episode 15 starts out with the Bad Batch going to this place called Eriadu, where Governor Tarkin, Grand Moff Tarkin, who I believe is still just governor at the time, is hosting a meeting with a bunch of other Imperial officers, including Dr. Hemlock, about the future of the Empire and what their future plans are and stuff like that. The Bad Batch believe, Tech and Echo mainly believe, that if they can get to Eriadu and get to the Imperial base, they can put a tracker on Hemlock's ship, so when Hemlock goes back to Mount Tantus, they'll be able to track him to Mount Tantus and save Crosshair. That's their current plan. Things don't go according to plan. They get there, they get to the base, they sneak in. Tarkin is hosting the meeting with the other officers. The Batch is able to put the homing device on Hemlock's ship, but then they realize that somebody else is there. Gee, I wonder who could it be? They notice that some of the other surveillance cameras in the base have gone offline that they did not deactivate. So there was somebody else in the base. It's Saw Gerrera. He and some of his soldiers have disguised themselves as stormtroopers so they can infiltrate the base, and they're going to blow it up. They're going to blow it sky high. And that doesn't work out very well. Now, throughout this episode, you can tell they're setting up some big things. Mainly from the scene where the Bad Batch first leave Pabu and go on their mission, their covert mission. Omega talks to Phee before they leave. She's like, we're on a covert mission, and she's all excited about it. And Fee's like, well, let me know the details when you get back. Yeah, right. I could tell in that moment immediately, like, oh, she's not coming back. She's not coming back. They wouldn't be highlighting that scene in the way they did if she was coming back. She's not coming back. And then it gets even worse. Then Phee sees Tech looking at his computer device, and she walks over to him and she's like, you were going to leave without saying goodbye? And he's like, well, yeah, in his typical Stark Tech fashion. And you can tell, and it's kind of been hinted at in the previous episodes, but especially in this scene, they are evoking a definite romantic, like that Phee has romantic feelings for Tech in some way. Because she says, like, well, don't run into any pirates or smugglers while you're out there. Because she herself is a smuggler or a pirate. And he's like, oh, there won't be any of those on this mission. And she's like, that's not quite what I meant. She's definitely into him, and he's very awkward around her. So they were hinting at something there, but they highlighted that scene quite a lot. It was meant to be a scene you could tell as you're watching the episode, this is an important scene. Remember it for later. It's one of those scenes that if you rewatch after the fact, you wish it didn't happen because it only makes it worse what happens later. Meanwhile, you also have the villain plotline. Tarkin's meeting with all of the officers. Hemlock gets up and debriefs Tarkin on the progress he's made with the cloning experiments. He says that they've almost cracked what previously only the Kaminoans knew about cloning. They've almost found out the knowledge they need to possess to do it as good as the Kaminoans did. And he's saying that soon enough, the Empire will be able to produce an enlightened society with advanced technology and molecular alteration. I don't know about you guys, but nothing about that sounds good. especially coming from Captain Creepyface. No. No way. That does not sound right at all. And I have no idea what it means. Like, even after the finale, you still don't really fully grasp what Hemlock's plans are. Why he's doing what he's doing. What is Mount Tantus specifically devoted towards? What is the goal that they're trying to accomplish? You don't know. Enlightened society with molecular alteration and advanced technology? Like, well, first of all, Star Wars technology is already super advanced. So how can you get any more advanced? Second of all, molecular alteration? Like, what are you trying to create an entirely new species? Yikes! And again, coming from the guy who was excommunicated from the Republic Science Club or whatever, I do not like the sound of that at all. And then he says that he's been using the clones that have been being sent to him, the clone prisoners, as experiments, as test subjects for whatever he's trying to accomplish. And then he says they're Imperial property and that, we don't require their permission to experiment on them. We just will because they're just things, basically. And what's interesting is that the other Imperial officers around him have their own perspectives. They're not just all like, well, yeah, let's just experiment on the clones because they're nothing. A couple of them even say, well, I fought beside some of them during the war, and they're loyal soldiers. Like, they're cunning warriors. And then Tarkin chimes in with his own skewed and, as always, terrible perspective and says, yeah, I fought beside some of them too. They developed a concerning level of individuality during the war. The Jedi kind of inspired them a little too much, so we need probably to just deal with these guys now, let Hemlock do what he's going to do, otherwise there might be a revolt. A clone uprising. But Tarkin's confident he can deal with it. And again, it's very interesting to learn these different officers' perspectives. Like how the two guys were like, no, wait, with the clones, they're pretty good warriors. Are we sure we should be doing this to them? A lot of people in the Senate are fighting for clone rights, so if they hear about these projects, they're going to flip their lids. Like, this isn't going to go well at all. And Hemlock's like, well, it's too covert. It's too hidden far enough away from the ears and eyes of the Senate for them to even remotely notice. That's, again, like the even scarier part. The fact that the Empire is willing to hire someone like Hemlock, someone as messed up as Hemlock, is frightening in and of itself. It's not surprising, but it is still very, very scary. And it's cool because immediately after this conversation, we get a big Rogue One callback. Director Krennic is there in the meeting. And I saw the guy sitting at the table, and he had his white uniform on and grayish hair. And I was like, is that supposed to be Krennic? I bet that's supposed to be Krennic. And sure enough, it was Krennic. But Tarkin calls him Commander Krennic at this time. So he's not, I guess, promoted to Director Krennic yet, as he was in Rogue One. But Tarkin asks him, hey, what's up with Project Stardust? What kind of progress have you made on that? And of course, Project Stardust is the Death Star, is the making of the Death Star talked about in Rogue One. That was the name of the project of the Death Star, Project Stardust, named after Galen Erso's nickname for Jyn Erso, his daughter. All talked about in Rogue One. If you haven't seen the movie, go check it out. It's phenomenal. But this is a callback, or I guess concerning the timeline, since this happens before Cole Ford, foreshadowing to the Death Star. And we got a lot of this in Rebels, too. So it's interesting how in Dave Filoni's animated projects, more and more now, they're hinting at, yes, the Death Star is out there. It's always looming. Director Krennic's working on it. Project Stardust, it's there. And I like that they always are mindful of the connectivity of their universe. Like, we got to make sure we're acknowledging this, because if we're going to have this meeting, then it's very likely Krennic would have been there. And Krennic would have, updated Tarkin on Project Stardust. So we have to be mindful of that. And I appreciate that they're aware of that. And then you have the finale of the episode 15, the ending climax, which is the Bad Batch, along with Omega so far, escape in these rail carts that are attached to the base that transport troops and things in and out of the base. And they escape on them. And Saw Gerrera's bombs go off, and that messes up the rail carts, so they're all stuck. And some stormtroopers are firing at them from the rail carts beside them. Beginning of next episode. So that part is the cliffhanger ending of episode 15. Then you jump into episode 16, the beginning of that episode. Stormtroopers are still firing at them. Then the Empire sends ships after them. You can tell Tarkin is ticked off that the base was attacked and that it was virtually destroyed. Like, blown apart on so many different parts of it. Like, not completely destroyed, but almost completely destroyed by Saw, who has escaped at this point. But in the process, Hemlock's shuttle with the homing beacon was destroyed, so the Bad Batch could not trace Hemlock back to Crosshair if he went back to Mount Tantus. So that plan is already ruined. So I was really wondering, because I'm expecting this whole time to build up to this big finale on Mount Tantus, they're going to go rescue Crosshair. That's what I'm expecting, and that is not what happens at all. At the beginning of the very last episode of this season, we are still on Eriadu. The Bad Batch is still under fire. And I'm really thinking to myself about what is going to happen? What is the main... Like, this feels like an episode that should have been in the middle of the season. Like, what's the main thing in this episode that's going to be like, no, this is the finale of this season, and we're hinting at stuff later? The ships are attacking the rail carts. Tech gets on top of the rail carts, onto the rail itself, gets to one of the control panels, trying to get the cart to move at all. But the ships are firing. The Imperial ships are firing on the rail carts, and they destroy the connection between the rail carts and the rail just enough to where the rail cart behind the one that the rest of the Bad Batch is in starts to fall off. Starts to crumble, droop down, and now is almost completely right angle with this other cart. Tech tries to jump back when he's gotten the connection fixed, when he's accomplished his task of getting the cart to move, but the cart won't move until the part that's been destroyed is disconnected, is blown off the other cart, so the cart that the Bad Batch are in can move. And of course, Tech doesn't get there in time. He grapples onto the destroyed part of the cart. The ships are still firing. The stormtroopers are still firing. And this whole time, Tech has been in all this peril. And you have what they did before with Fee and Tech in the episode previously. And I'm thinking to myself, they're going to do it. I had a feeling that one of the Bad Batch members would not make it through these final episodes. I have a feeling that to give that punch of the finale, to give the finale something it needed, some emotional, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. Unlike the ending of the previous season, where it was the destruction of Kamino, the destruction of Topoka City, and Crosshair solidifying his stance as part of the Empire, even though that doesn't last, it is clearly portrayed this season. I had a feeling they would do something like this. And so Tech grapples with his rope onto the destroyed part of the cart. He's hanging from it. It keeps going further down, and it's only attached at this point by one piece of the connection to the other cart. And Wrecker and Omega are right there at the edge of the destroyed part of the cart, and they're looking down at Tech, and they're like, Tech, you gotta come up, come on, we gotta go. And Tech is like, you're gonna have to go without me. I'm not gonna make it. The cart won't move unless this cart falls. And I appreciate how in this moment the music is swelling. You can tell what's about to happen. And just as you're fully realizing it, just as you're like, oh, they're about to do this, music stops. No music. You have Tech hanging there. And Wrecker's like, come on, we gotta get out of here. Climb up. Stormtroopers are still firing. The ships are still firing on the same spot. And Tech just says, you gotta go. Plan 99. Which I assume is like, you gotta leave one behind so you guys can live. So you guys can escape. I assume that's the plan he's talking about. And as the music stops, as the silence enters, Wrecker's like, don't you do it. And Tech just sighs and he's like, when have we ever followed orders? He has his gun, he shoots the connection, and the cart falls, Tech along with it. That one hurts bad. It hurts in the way it's supposed to hurt. It's just because the Bad Batch are a group that you love seeing work together. That's the appeal of the Bad Batch. Crosshair leaving was bad enough. That was a big enough blow. Him becoming part of the Empire. Sooner or later, I think the audience knew that at some point, one of them would have to die to really solidify the Bad Batch's emotional connection to the audience. It's kind of the same way Qui-Gon Jinn's death worked, the same way Ben Kenobi's death worked in A New Hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi's death worked, is sometimes you don't realize how much a character means to you or how important they are to the universe, important they are to you as a part of the universe, until they're gone. And this entire season, Tech they have done nothing but show how committed he is to being a good guy. Even though he's the analytical one, he's the strategist, he's the one mapping out all the battles and thinking up all the plans and doing all the computer hacking stuff. He's not the guy. He's the Q. He's the Q. Like in James Bond. He is the Q of the story. And usually the Q of the stories don't get that emotional punch to the gut. They don't get to be the character that almost makes you cry. In this season, they gave Tech that honor. And I should have known. I didn't think they were going to. I didn't think he was going to be the member. But throughout the season, I should have known that that's what they were leading up to. There was too many moments where Tech, they made him the hero. Like when he jumped into the well in episode 9, I believe it was, to save Omega when they were stranded on that planet. The emotional moments that he's had with Omega. Him kind of realizing that he has emotion inside of him, more feelings than he realized. Being able to see him feel more. Even that first episode that seemed like the filler episode, when he got to do the pod race, I said pod race, speeder race, and he won. And Wrecker's like, hey, you won! And he's like, well, of course I did. You love those Tech moments. And you don't realize how fun of a character he is until he's gone. So this episode basically just solidifies his importance to the Bad Batch. It solidifies the audience's emotional connection with this character that otherwise hadn't had a lot of emotion previously, but they had been building it up over the course of the season. And so, even though it may not be as much of like a detriment as like Hunter dying, like the leader of the Bad Batch, it still hits home because of what they've done with his character in this season. And I really appreciate the honor that they gave him in this moment of just the silence. He gets to sacrifice himself. He shoots the connection. The cart falls so they can escape. Immediately after that, the cart starts moving and it smashes through one of the entrances where the cart comes out of. And Omega's badly injured. And she's getting up and she's like slowly getting up. And she's like, Tech, we gotta go back for Tech. And she was saying that earlier. She was screaming that earlier as Tech was falling. And then she falls down unconscious again. And then you see it from her perspective, her slowly, like her eyes are opening. She can barely think. She can barely perceive what's going on. And all she can see is Echo, Hunter, and Wrecker getting her out of there and getting her back to the Marauder and fighting off the stormtroopers as they're doing so. And they say, look, we got to get her back to Ord Mantell. AZ can help her. AZ can help her. So they get her back to Ord Mantell. She wakes up. And she doesn't remember what happened at first. And then she realizes, Tech is gone. And boy, gosh golly, does Dave Filoni know how to just rip out your heart. Because Omega's freaking out at this point. She's like, Tech, we gotta go back for Tech. Why didn't he let us save him? Why didn't he let us save him? I don't understand. And she is sobbing. And you have Wrecker there too. And even he sheds a tear. Even like he walks out of the room slowly just because he needs some time. And even he, this big, the big bulky guy, the big tough guy, he's crying. He can't take it. He's like, I lost my brother. And Omega's like, why didn't Tech let us save him? And Hunter says, he made a sacrifice. He put the squad above himself. And we're not going to waste that. It's in this moment of crisis, in this moment of intense emotion that Hunter tells Omega that they think it's best for them to go back to Pabu and stay there. They're done being soldiers. They're going to have a life with Omega on Pabu. Hunter, Wrecker, and Omega are. Echo is still there. He's on the Marauder. And Omega seems responsive to this. She seems like she's willing to accept this. Like, okay, I think, yeah, let's go to Pabu. Let's stay on Pabu. And you're already on such an emotional downhill. Complete like roller coaster after what just happened. Wrecker goes to Sid's bar. Because Sid's place is where they're at. And Sid seems sad. And they mask what they're actually doing really well because Sid is clearly sad. She's clearly distraught. And you obviously think it's because Tech died. Because she always called him Goggles. And Wrecker's at the bar and she offers him a drink and he says no and that it won't help. And she's like, I'm really sorry about Goggles. I always liked him. And Wrecker's like, yeah, I did too. And you're really in that moment of just like, Tech is gone. And then, outside, Echo is on the Marauder. And the Gonk droid that they own comes up to him. Starts telling him something. And he's like, what? What is it? He looks outside. The Empire's there. On Ord Mantell. They're conquering the planet. Okay. Seems awfully sudden. Out of nowhere. Are they here for the Bad Batch? How'd they find him? Sid at the bar, still looking distraught. And Wrecker can tell something's up more than just Tech is dead. Wrecker's like, what's going on? And Sid's like, I'm sorry, Muscles, but you guys have just put the heat too much on me lately. I had to make a tough decision. She sold them out. Sid sold them out. She let the Empire know, just for the credits, that they were on Ord Mantell after knowing that Tech died. After their squad experienced such a detriment to themselves by losing Tech. She does it after the fact. If nothing else has solidified her horribleness, her just absolute evil, that's it right there. Your hate for the character is complete. Sid has got to go at some point. She's got to get something what's coming to her because, ooh man, that's just one low and cold blow. And they set it up perfectly in this season. They set it up perfectly. In episode 4, The same episode where Tech wins the race. They're foreshadowing that entire episode. That one gangster's like, Sid's not who you think she is. She's not. And you're going to find that out one day. You're going to find it out. She's not all good. And as if the stuff that she's already not helped the Bad Batch with in previous episodes by leaving them stranded on that planet, as if that wasn't evidence of that enough, this is just the icing on the cake. Or should I say baking of the whole cake because of how, again, detrimental it is. It's like, not only have you lost a member of your squad, now I'm sending the Empire to come get you. To come capture you. To come get Omega. I don't care what happens to you guys. I just want the credits. And yes, she still seems distraught. She seems, I guess, sad about what she did. When she takes the credits from Hemlock, she seems sad. But like, as the audience, still you're like, just you traitor. Because even Hunter, when he goes to confront the Empire, and he has the gun aimed at Hemlock, the Empire has already captured Wrecker. Hunter sent AZ and Omega to escape. He just told him, go, get to the Marauder. And Hunter's confronting Hemlock and the other Imperial clone commandos. Hemlock gives Sid the credits for helping bring the Bad Batch in. And Hunter just looks at Sid with this look of disgust. As well he should, as she walks away. Hemlock gives Hunter the typical bad guy spiel. Give us Omega, or we'll kill Wrecker. Lower your blaster now. Hunter does it. Omega decided to stay behind and try to save Hunter and Wrecker, which I understand. And she almost does, and Hemlock tries to negotiate with Omega. He's like, hey, we'll let Wrecker and Hunter live if you come with us. And she's like, no way. And that clone comes up to her from behind and stuns her. Then Echo and AZ commandeer one of the... It's a walker. It's like an ATST, but it's one that I haven't seen before. It's like heavily armored. They commandeer one of those, start a ruckus, start shooting at the Empire. That's enough of a distraction to where Hunter and Wrecker can escape. Hemlock's already escaped with Omega in his shuttle. Hunter, Wrecker, Echo, and AZ get to the Marauder to try to get him. They can't make it. They lost track. They're able to fly and escape the planet without the notice of the other Imperial cruisers. I don't know how that is. I would assume that they would have gotten captured. Even at the beginning of the episode 15, they're able to fly in with some of Echo's codes that he's gotten from working with Rex to Ariadu. But the thing that's always going in my mind is like they're always able to do that. They're always able to just either fly in or fly out with relatively no consequences and no disruptions. Fly into an Imperial territory, fly out of Imperial territory. I get the code thing, but just once I would like it to not work. Just so we can prove that the Empire has some sort of integrity when it comes to occupying worlds. Like, oh, our defense system is actually good enough to where we can repel people we don't want or capture them. But I don't know if that's ever happened. They're just able to use codes and fly right in or fly right out without codes. So I don't get it. But anyway, they lost track. They hyperspace away, and Hunter's like, we have got to get Omega back, and we are not stopping until we do. And that's the end of the Bad Batch in this episode. That's the last you see of them. Get ready for season 3. That's basically what they're saying by doing this. And at the end of the episode, Hemlock takes Omega to Mount Tantus. Omega sees Nala Se. They bring Nala Se out to Omega, and Omega's like, why am I here? What do they want with me? And Hemlock says, have Emery look after her. Have Emery look after her injuries. Emery is the scientist girl, the scientist lady, that has been supervising Crosshair in the previous episodes. The one that Crosshair shot with a stun blast when he was trying to escape in episode 14. The one that aired last week. Turns out she is a lot more important of a character than I thought she was. Because this whole time, we have been spending time with her more than usual for just a random side character. And I have wondered, like, is she supposed to be more important than they're supposedly letting on? Because it seems like they're almost trying to say that she has some kind of level of importance. She's Omega's sister. Omega is taken to this laboratory, and she sees a bunch of other clones on these tables, including Crosshair, being experimented on. And then she sees a bunch of clones in the cloning vats that they were birthed in, like on Kamino. We don't know why. We don't know what the mess Hemlock is doing to them, but they're there. And Omega sees Crosshair, and she's like, Crosshair, wake up. Are you all right? Emery walks in, scientist lady, and Omega's like, what have you done to him? And she's like, I tried to convince him to cooperate, but he wouldn't listen. And Omega's like, I want to talk to Nala Se. And Emery goes, it's ironic that you trust her more than you trust me. And at that point, I'm thinking, like, why would she trust you? She doesn't know you. And then Omega says the same thing. And it's funny because this entire time, I have thought to myself when I'll hear Emery talk, she kind of sounds like Omega. She's got a similar voice, similar accent. Their voices are very similar. Not for no reason, apparently. She takes her goggles off. She's Omega's sister. How? Why? What the mess? I don't know. In the list of things that I was not expecting that completely caught me off guard, that would have been on the top. Because I don't... It's weird to reveal something really big about this side character that hasn't mattered very much in this scientist girl. At the same time, being very interesting. Like, she's been working on Mount Tantus this whole time, and you don't really think much of it until you're like, oh, she's Omega's sister. What? So, I don't know how that works. Is Emery a clone from Jango Fett's blood? Because Omega does have Jango Fett's blood, which means that Emery is another girl clone made from Jango Fett's blood. Which might allude further to what Hemlock is doing on that planet. In fact, Hemlock talks to Nala Se also, and he says, your Prime Minister told me that Omega mattered to you a lot. I brought her back to you now, so will you do what the Emperor wants you to do? And Nala Se is like, what the Emperor wants is impossible. And Hemlock says, I don't care, basically. Just do it. Make it possible. Otherwise, Omega will suffer the consequences. So, Omega's life is on the line if Nala Se doesn't do whatever this mystery thing that the Emperor wants is. I'm thinking it's cloning Force wielders, or something to that extent. They have seemed to allude a few times that Omega is Force sensitive, which might also partially be why Nala Se wanted her back. Because I doubt Nala Se would want her back for mainly emotional attachment to Omega. I wouldn't understand that because Nala Se has been shown to be kind of a jerk in the Clone Wars, so I wouldn't really get that. But her value, Omega's value as a Force-sensitive clone of Jango Fett, now that would be something valuable to Nala Se, especially if Nala Se was the main one responsible for creating Omega. So you have that, coupled with the fact that Omega has a sister, coupled with the fact that Hemlock wants this mystery thing to happen for Nala Se to do, and you have no idea what any of it means. And that's the end of the season. And after seeing the finale be not what I expected at all, but still really good, I'm starting to see that this season, there was kind of a reason it had so many filler episodes. They were trying to tell a story in the end of the season itself, but they did not have enough main material to draw it out over 16 episodes. So most of the payoffs for the setups set up in this season are going to be in season 3. And I didn't even know if they had confirmed a season 3 yet, but I mean they're going to have to now because of the way this one ends. And it is a catch-22 because we know we're going to see Cody again, but he was only in one episode this season. I was excited to see a whole arc from him. That is a little frustrating. I was also prepared to see Crosshair get some more action in this finale. He didn't. But I do understand why. They're trying to draw out this Hemlock clone mystery story over another season, and I think so long as they can keep the story focused in season 3, way more focused than they've done in this season, I think it could be really good. Problem with this season being, like I said, I don't think they had enough story to draw it out over 16 episodes, so you got more filler episodes than were necessary. You're adding like 5 extra episodes that don't need to be there. So it's a catch-22 with this season because it has some really great moments. This finale was insane. This 2-part finale was. But it did not have a focused story in the season itself. Even though I do think that they didn't have enough, and I understand why they had to add filler episodes, I still think there was a better way to do it and more stuff that they could have added that actually mattered, instead of like that one episode where they were with Fee discovering that ancient civilization or whatever that ended up not really leading to anything. The Sid pod racing or whatever episode, that ended up foreshadowing to something, and I even said that in my review for that episode 4, that it would foreshadow something that Sid would do that is not good. The finale pays that off in a horrible but very well written way. The Gunji episode didn't really seem to mean a whole lot. It could have implied some force sensitivity on Omega's part. I thought that episode could have been better though. So I just think, again, consistency has been a big problem with this season, and if they were more consistent, this would have been like top tier, but the season as a whole is a little in the middle because of that. However, with the story they've constructed, I am very intrigued to see where they go next. So overall, I think even though this season was inconsistent, I will give it a thumbs up. If I had to only give it a thumbs down or a thumbs up, I would give it a thumbs up because the Crosshair episodes were amazing, because the Imperial Conspiracy episodes were phenomenal, and because the emotional moments that the Bad Batch get throughout these episodes, the insane loss of one of its very valued members in tech, that does elevate this season quite a lot. So overall, great moments, some low moments, but not low enough to make me dislike the season. So thank you guys for watching. I'm very much looking forward to what we're going to see next. Have a very blessed day. May the Lord be with you. May the Force be with you. Goodbye. And one last thing. Tech, you were a good soldier, and you followed orders until the end. And that's a wrap.